So we've got another image sent in for us to edit, so make sure you go give him a follow. All of his details will be in the description. So looking at his feed, we can see he does awesome portraits and pretty decent landscapes as well. So a pretty warm image, very often at sunset, and the image we're going to be working with today is this one here. So make sure you go give him a follow because I think he's underrated. And let's get into Lightroom and see what we can do. Okay, so portrait images, not the easiest, but the first thing I'm going to do, enable profile corrections, brighten it up a bit. So that's what it would look like if it was exposed a bit more. So we need to make it nice and moody. So I'm going to bring up the exposure by one stop, bring down the contrast. Highlights, I'm going to bring all the way up. Shadows up a lot. Whites a bit. And I'm going to bring those blacks down, all the way down. And that looks kind of ugly, but we're going to do a fade, which will take away a few of those blacks. Clarity, just softening it a bit. And saturation down. Now the lens that this was taken on was a Sigma 35mm 1.4, so it's great for portraits. You fit in the background and you fit in the model and you get the blurry backdrop. So great lens for this style. And now we're going to do the fade. If you look at these blacks, you can see they're not really black anymore because I've got a bit of a fade. So that's what we're going to do. And I'm going to keep this nice and straight because the image looks quite flat. There's no highlights and whites popping. It's quite flat apart from her face that is quite bright, but that's done with brushes and filters. So what I'm going to do now is she's got a nice glow around her. So we need to put that nice soft glow around her. I'm just trying to get all the exposure up before we do the colors. So watch at the edges. And exposure up a bit. Highlights all the way up. Whites. And I don't want it getting too bright, so I'm going to bring down the shadows as that will affect her, and I really just want that soft glow around her, so that shadows down is just to counteract that so she doesn't get too bright. And sharpening, if you want. Okay, so I'm going to also brighten up this jacket, because I know it's not all done by colors. It's definitely done by brushing and filters. Just a tad. Gonna bring highlights up. Not many of them. Whites is gonna give it a bit of pop. And a little bit of clarity will give that quite sharp pop. As you can see what that will do. I think there's a little bit of this shine in that image. So I'm just going to bring it to about there. And I'm going to now do colors. So coming down, greens aren't doing too much. Aquas, affecting that background. So shorts and a bit of the background. You can see it's quite a teal colour. Just down a tad. I generally desaturate oranges and reds. Might bring up the yellows. That's affecting that background there. I think it looks pretty saturated. No greens. Bringing up these blues. Actually, I'm going to take them down a lot. Aquas, yeah, I'm going to bring them down. And there's not many purples in this, but I'm just going to bring it down in line with everything else. And same with magenta. So luminance, brightness, and deepness of colors. So moody and deep colors, that's what we're going for. So deepening most of these. And we're going to have to make our jacket pop a bit more somehow, while still getting those deep, moody-ish colors. So yellow, that background, I think it's looking pretty bright. Same with these blues. Now I'm just going to put a little tiny bit of orange in the shadows and see if that helps get that warm look. I'm only going to put a tiny bit in for now. And looking up here, I'm thinking a bit of blue in the highlights. Bluey green. Right, moving on. I'm going to sharpen a lot. But I'm going to bring up the masking. So if I hold Alt, I'm only sharpening the outline of her, so that makes her pop a bit more. And that's about it. So I want to enhance this fade from the here. As you can see, it's kind of dark and it fades into the glow here. And I just want to make that a little bit better. So a little bit of a vignette. Going to feather it a lot so it fades. And quite a decent amount of grain to help with the texture. Okay, so one thing I want to do is come back to this filter, and I'm going to bring up the warmth, and it's going to give that jacket that nice golden pop. And done. So that's that. And one other thing, as you can see, it's a lot darker down here. So I'm going to put a filter. Keeps your eye going upwards. Going to really drop the shadows. And it gets a bit darker towards the bottom, so drop. A little bit of blacks. So the next thing I want to do is bring out this jacket even more. So I'm going to do that with a brush. So I want to do things like bring up the exposure a little, quite a bit actually. I want to really bring up the contrast. Highlights, yeah, I'll bring those up. Whites will really make it pop, so I'm going to bring that up a lot. And then clarity always makes things pop a lot. So I'm going to grab my brush and I'm just going to paint. I'm just going to paint everywhere where I see that is bright. So I also see that her hair is being brushed. So I'm also going to do that. And I'm just going to start brushing. It's a bit too strong. Down here, drop the flow. Oops. Alright, I think it's looking pretty good. I think they're looking pretty darn similar now. So, next thing, I'm going to brighten up her face. So, radial filter. Hold Alt, click reset. Press M, and then you can zoom in, move around. Alright, so I'm going to put it very tightly on her face. Because otherwise it will affect her hat and things. Alright, so I am going to exposure. Now that looks way too bright, but what I'm going to do is drop the whites. I'm going to bring up the highlights. Didn't do much. Shadows down a bit. And I'm actually going to drop the blacks as well, because I want to keep a good amount of contrast in her face still. I still want definition in her cheeks. And then because we darkened it a bit, it made it more saturated, so I'm going to bring that down a bit. And I might feather it out. No, not feather it out. I'm going to bring down the feathering so it affects. So if I bring up the feathering, it's just going to affect the middle, bringing it down, really getting the whole circle, getting the whole face is what I'm trying to do. Alright, it's looking better, but as you can see, we couldn't get the entire face. So what I'm going to do is now I'm going to, what do I want to do? I'm going to soften the face. So I'm going to smooth her skin out. So Photoshop is way better, but I'm going to show you what I can do in Lightroom, as it's a real pain to have to jump into Photoshop for everything. So I'm just going to paint pretty much her whole face, everywhere I want smoother. Going to bring my flow up. So this is the easiest way I know of. So we'll click off that, and then you go clarity -100, sharpening -100, and it softened the skin, but it maybe wasn't quite enough. So what you do is just duplicate that exact same thing on top of it again, and that just doubly enhanced every effect. But maybe that's too much now, so you might pull back. Might pull back a bit on some of these. Alright, so kind of smooth, but as you can see, her face is still quite dark over here. So we still haven't brightened up the middle of her face, but not her whole face. So another brush, and start painting on the places we want to brighten now. So and again, bringing up exposure. Could bring up contrast. Shadows I might bring up. Still want some shape in your face, but yeah, see how that looks. It's a lot brighter, it's a bit patchy. Might want to we're going to go with that. So now her face is quite bright. One thing I want to do, I'm going to put a bit of green tint, take out some of that redness, as now it looks quite yellow. Before it was quite orange and red. I put a bit of green tint in and it goes a bit more yellow. So I think that looks good. Right, next thing we want to do is maybe do her eyes. So this is quite complex thing. So brush, come over to custom and come down to iris enhance. So this is designed for specifically doing this job, brightening the eyes. So this brush, it's gonna really brighten your eyes. Maybe a little down there. Get rid of that. Might want to keep your flow up a little. Right. Done. Gonna do it to the other eye. Next thing I want to do is bring out the white in her eye, or the twinkle bit, whatever you call that. So come here and go to, actually we'll try teeth whitening, and I will bring up the exposure some more because I want it really bright, and then just brush. And that will actually make a much bigger difference than what you think, being able to see that. You always want your eyes to probably be the sharpest thing in the whole image. I'll reset. I'm going to bring it up to 100. Duplicate it. Okay, so I think we're done with the filters. Now, I think I've underestimated how flat and soft this image is. I think I've over sharpened and brought the whites way too far up. So I'm gonna go through all the settings again and quickly adjust a few that I think I need changing. So I'm gonna really drop the whites here. I'm gonna get rid of the sharpness, and hopefully that gives us that soft image. I'm gonna drop the whites here. But as you can see, we've lost the whites in the face, so just add them back in. Done. So, a few things I want to change. I think I will drop the vibrance. So vibrance affects the midtones, and saturation I'm going to bring up. So that will affect more of the shadows and highlights. Now I'm going to bring up the fade. As you can see, I think there's a bit more fade in his one. And I'm going to, I think it's a little dark right down here. So I'm just going to drag this a little longer. Take it down there. And I'm actually going to bring up the highlights, maybe a few shadows, and I'm going to bring down the whites because I think we've overdone it there too. Clarity, I want it a bit more crisp. Right, so I'm just going to change a few of these colors. So when you look down here, you can see a lot of red in our one, not in his one. So I'm thinking when we shift this across, you can see what that's doing. All those reds down in those shadows. I'm going to orange them up. And I want a bit more of a deep orange for the jacket, so I'm going to move the oranges just a tad that way. Yellows, I'm thinking it looks almost a little green down here. So I'm going to, as you can see what this is doing. So that gives it a bit more of that green look. So greens here, there's only one little bit of green in this image, and it's this bit down here. There's some weird greens, so just get rid of that. I think these blues also look a bit more green, so I'm going to push the aqua. I'm not going to do it to the blues because otherwise you'll see that these will change a lot, her shorts. So I know they're about right. Coming down saturation, drop those yellows a bit more, and take those greens down. Just trying to match the water as well, so bringing that down. Maybe blues a little more. Yellow's right up, so you can see what that's doing. Luminance. Probably drop. I think I've overthought the luminance of these blues. Gave them a bit too much shine. And split toning. So I now think we are looking very blue in the water and in the sky, and I think there's a bit more green. So I'm gonna put more of a green and move my slider away from these blues, almost to the yellows as well. And then I'm just going to lift it to about there. Going to leave shadows. I'm going to get rid of the sharpening, see how it looks. Yeah, actually bring it right down. And I think that gives us a much flatter looking image. Going to try to fix up this brush a bit. So I think her hair is being brushed a little more. So brighten up her hair a bit more. And I think the front of the jacket is way too bright on our one, so I'm just going to get rid of pretty much all of it. So I remember we brushed quite a bit there. Didn't need it. And I think we get a much more flatter, sort of not so bright image. I think it looks way better. So her eyes might be a little too bright. You might not like that. The crop looks really weird if you haven't noticed that the whole video. She's a little bigger in our image, even though we have it cropped perfectly. If you look at the edges, I'm not sure what's going on there. And I think one thing that we're not going to do, I think he's lifted her chin a little in Photoshop. So if you wanted to try that, you would go into Photoshop, use the liquify tool, and that's very easy to use. Just look up a tutorial on that if you don't know. And that's how you move people's faces around a little. And yeah, and you might want to brighten up areas of her face. He would have used Photoshop, but I thought I'd try to show you as much as I could in Lightroom. So that's about it from me. Leave a like, guys, leave a comment. Thanks for watching. It's been a long one, and I'll see you guys in the next one.